I would like to invite Rihanna Scipio to the stage. Everyone over and then they can introduce themselves. Feel free. Yeah. We also have Rachel Owen. She's so chill. I love it. Last but not least, we've got Shani Akila. I'm so excited for you guys to hear the conversation with these incredible women. And I feel like I could list out all your accomplishments, but I'd rather hear you say it, to be honest. So yeah, if you want to just go one by one, introduce yourselves. Who are you and what brings you here tonight?
First of all, I want to say I'm so proud of you, Nikki. I feel like a proud mum. You are incredible. You are such an inspiration, and you've done it. We're here. Well done. So my name's Rihanna Scipio. I'm a former broadcaster. Probably a lot of you here are too young to know who I am, but I presented on so many of the very popular programs in this country. So I'm Britain's first black weather person, and thank you, male or female. I worked on Newsroom South East. I've worked on Watchdog, on UK's Worst, a wonderful series from the BBC News and Current Affairs department called Black Britain. We broke so many stories, a real, trailblazer in our genre, because it was the first actual series to come from the same department that Horizon and Panorama and some of these wonderful journalistic series came from. And so I'm very proud of that. And then I went to Los Angeles to expand my career in 2010. And I really, work was going fantastically well. And then I developed a wonderful drinking career alongside my work. And I was really brought to my knees by the culmination of a lifetime of unaddressed trauma. And so I went into recovery, and thank God, I'm 13 years sober. And it really is one of my major achievements. People always ask me, you've had a fantastic media career and a very successful career. But I feel like recovery for me is bigger than all of that. It reconnected me with myself, with the fragmented parts, the broken bits. And I always believe that I feel my experiences that I can't remember who it was that said we're stronger at the broken parts, that actually made me stronger for having gone through that experience. In any case, I fell in love with the change that I experienced, of 180 change. And I started to coach women in Los Angeles just through word of mouth and pass on the gift that I'd been given. And then it moved into I opened up my first coaching practice in Beverly Hills, and with a handful of clients, word started to spread. And then opened up an 8-bed residential for women recovering, and expanded from recovery from chemical addiction to working with women who are in recovery from love and sex addictions and disordered eating. And those were the two most incredible years and the hardest years I've ever experienced, because I actually had a brick and mortar retreat on the same road as just fun fact, is the same road on Bundy Street, which is the same road as what's his name, the guy who killed OJ Simpson, that he died. That's on the same fun fact. So on the same road there. Incredible retreat. I was the only Black woman business owner partnering with Jewish-owned businesses. And so partnering also with recovery centres that, you know, from trauma to nutrition to, you know, all different aspects of health and well-being. It was a lot. I had 12 staff and 8 women at a time who were in crisis in their life. And, you know, I've heard talk about how we are super achievers as Black women. And that experience really taught me that I had taken on so much. And I started to question why, what it was that I felt that I had to take on this massively heavy burden. The beauty of that chapter is that I closed the doors of Imagine, it was called Imagine Transformational Living of Los Angeles, and I closed the doors after 2 years and took the coaching and training into a digital platform, which is riannascipio.com. So now what I do in London and Los Angeles is I speak, coach, and I have a 9-week program called the Tight Relationship Formula: Trust, Integrity, Growth, Honor, and Togetherness. And it's not about how to do relationships necessarily with other people, but about reintegrating the parts of ourselves, really becoming tight with who we are. Because I've heard quite a few times in the testimony of some of the incredible pioneers here that have been taking the platform before me, that sometimes when we're in the middle of trauma, it's very difficult for us to recognize that that's what it is. There's a bit of a lapse, there's a time delay. And so one of the things that trauma does is it really removes us from our sense of self. And so that's what the program does. It's a 9-week coaching program. I had the privilege of speaking around stages. This is where Nikki and I connected. I was hosting the Baton Awards, I think it was last year, and workshops for big tech companies, such as Indeed and so on and so forth. So yeah, I love this. And what I love, as I can't believe it, because I'm inside, I'm sort of still 25, you know. That might be pushing it actually, but it's wonderful to see the next generation taking the baton and really communicating in a language that we didn't have before. We've got this language now, and you are the holders of the key to well-being, to recovery, to what it is to live a whole and joyful life. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me. That's it.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rachel Owen. I also want to express my love and yeah, just pride in just seeing you thriving. We've known each other for many years now, through many ups and downs, and I want to salute you, my sister, this Black History Month, because you're just incredible. So thank you for creating this space, and this is awesome. So hi everyone, I'm Rachel Owen. I'm a diversity and inclusion expert. I've been working in the field for like 10 years now. Don't look it, I know. I'm joking. I've worked across every industry because I've been a consultant across tech, retail, charity sector, every sector as a consultant. Worked with a few consultancies doing diversity and inclusion work. Even before it was kind of called diversity and inclusion, when it was more like equalities and all of that kind of thing. But I've always been passionate about equality issues. I studied law, but was always interested in human rights and that aspect of things. And that's what led me into this career. So I've run programs for young people, especially young Black people. I worked with, I did a project with the Mayor of London over 2 years to increase the unemployment rates of young Black men. So working with various businesses in the construction sector during the pandemic, as it was a COVID-proof sector, huge opportunities in the sector to create a thriving career, and across tech. I currently work with Resurgo, which is a coaching organization. They coach young people into work and have been running programs for over 20 years and have supported thousands of young people who are facing barriers to the workplace into work. And we also do coaching for businesses, building teams, feedback culture, all that good stuff. And I'm the diversity inclusion manager there. And I also do consulting outside of that. Mental health has been a big part of my journey. I think the first time I really had an issue or crisis was in 2011 when I was studying abroad at Spelman College, which is a historically Black women's college in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. And it was probably the kind of change of scenery, just moving to a completely different location by myself, which I guess brought up the trauma that was in me that I just didn't even know was there. And since that period, it's been an ongoing journey that I'm still on today. And I actually released a recording of scriptures. I'm a Christian that I've been collecting and recording over the past few years. Scriptures to encourage people who are struggling with fear, anxiety, and depression, which is what I've been struggling with throughout my whole career, and has impacted my career in many ways. But I'm sure we'll get into that when we're answering the questions. So yeah, you can find that online. I can share the link with you. But my Instagram is Ray, R-A-E-L-D-N. On Instagram, you can find it there. And I just put it out there because I wanted to encourage people. And as I said, anxiety, fear, and depression, this is something I've been working on for years, but because of the anxiety, because of the fear, because of all these things, it's taken so long to come out. And I've used it myself as I've been working on it, and just want to put it out there for other people to experience and use. But yeah, really looking forward to delving deeper.
Again, just want to say, Nikki, I'm so proud of you. I've known Nikki since primary school, so we go way back, and it's just been amazing to see your journey and how you've grown and how you've risen above such adversity and are using your experiences to give back. I think it's incredible, and I was very emotional actually. I think I was there crying when you were speaking, so I'm glad I've got it together. But hi everyone, I'm Shania Keeler. I'm a writer, a screenwriter, and a book influencer. I have always loved writing, always loved reading. I started taking it seriously in like 2019. I met an author called Bernardine Evaristo, who some of you might know. And meeting her was such an incredible experience. I think at the time, I don't really know what happened. I feel like I might have had a panic attack because I was really stressed at work. I kind of felt like I didn't want to be there. I was doing too much. I think Jess spoke about, as Black women, we have a tendency to kind of do the most. That is definitely me. And I was feeling really, really overwhelmed at the time. But I went to this was a book launch of her book, Girl, Woman, Other, at my local library in Woolwich, and my sister was hosting it. And I spoke to Bernardine afterwards, and I spoke about, like, I love writing, like, how can I develop my craft? And she told me about a masterclass that she's running for under 25s at the time, so I just made the cut. And I remember in the first session, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. This is the thing that I really want to do. And ever since then, really, I've been focusing on my craft. I've done lots of courses. I've done lots of reading. During the pandemic, that was an amazing time for me just to focus on my writing, so I didn't have the commute. And I really got into this habit or this practice of writing before work, of reading. And I guess, yeah, like 4 years later, I've got a book deal, which is amazing. But it was on the screen earlier, and I was like, oh my gosh, Nikki, you put this thing on. But anyway, yeah, so I, over the past like 3 years, I've been working on a short story collection called For Such a Time as This. The first story was basically inspired by me being on Hinge, as I'm sure a lot of us were at the time, still are. Okay, I'm done with the apps now, it's not for me. But one of my friends was speaking to someone who also had the sickle cell trait like her, and that gave me the inspiration to kind of write a story about a couple that meet on the app. They both have the trait, and they're kind of debating about like what they should do going forwards. And initially, when I started the collection, I wanted to look at how Black people were, I guess, dating, finding love during the pandemic, but it kind of expanded way beyond that based on my experiences in life. So, for example, one of the stories is about a bridesmaid who's a serial bridesmaid, And that was me. So I've been a bridesmaid like 6 times in 2 years. So that inspired a story. My granddad was got sick with cancer. I went to visit him in Jamaica, and that inspired a story. But I guess the most powerful story in the collection is actually something that was very traumatic that I went through at work. I was in a similar role to kind of Rachel in terms of diversity inclusion at the height of Black Lives Matter. Before that I was really involved in the BAME network, even though I had like an undercover like Black network that no one really knew about. So I used to work in the civil service, and wherever I go, I'm always like passionate about bringing Black people together. So it started off with a group chat with some of us women. Whenever I saw Black women who looked a similar age to me in like our building, I'll invite them to lunch on Thursday. And that developed into a group chat called You Can't Touch My Hair. So yeah, like I created this network essentially of young Black professionals in the civil service. So yeah, I always kind of had that going on, but I was also involved in the BAME network at work. And during during COVID, I was really kind of speaking about the impact that the pandemic was having on Black communities in particular, but BAME more generally. I hate that term, but it's a term we use that at work. And so much happened in that time. I was really kind of advocating for Black people at work. In the height of George Floyd, I wrote this blog that went viral in my organization, speaking about kind of systemic racism in the civil service. And it all culminated in me being offered a role as the anti-racism program lead for my department, which is the first of its kind in Whitehall. And it was all going really, really well, all going amazingly. And it came to me applying for my role formally after doing it for about 6 months. It came to apply. I'd basically written a job application. Everything that was stated in the role, I did, because I wrote the job description, and I didn't get an interview, which was insane. Very traumatic experience. And there was so much in it in terms of racism and ageism and just a lot of stuff. Really painful, but I had such a powerful kind of community of Black women around me, my parents, people from my church. And I was actually able to turn that story into art, essentially. And it's that story that basically got me my book deal. So that's the main story in the collection. So yeah, my collection is called For Such a Time as This, which is a very, very personal story. It's about 80% true. And yeah, it's all about kind of, racism in the workplace, the importance of community, the importance of Black community, but ultimately like using your voice as a weapon, and being true to yourself, being true to your craft, and I guess essentially, as I'm a Christian as well, doing what I believe God has called me to do in terms of writing. So, yeah. Out in June next year, but you can actually pre-order it. So it's called For Such a Time as This, and my name is Shani Akila.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, are these women so incredible? Can we just have another round of applause for all of them? Okay, so I feel like there's so many directions we can take this conversation, and it's probably just gonna get deeper and, Jack in the box, but we'll run with it. So my first question is, what does it mean to thrive as a Black woman in the workplace? And how do you do that? Anyone?
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to give you the real answer. Right? For me, I can only share from my experience. The main bulk of my career as a broadcast journalist and presenter has been in the BBC. Oh, yes, right. I mean, when it comes to institutional racism, I was literally in the bowel of the beast. And it's real, and it's very real. And the sadness is that, as we've said, at the time, you're boiling in the pot and you don't know it. And so there's an enormous amount of sadness for that former self. And there is also a bit of embarrassment as well, that so many things were said and done and didn't get a response, didn't get the response that I would have scripted today, that I would have done, you know. I wasn't able oftentimes to recognize the gaslighting, the atmospheric abuse. And so I, you know, would smile and be compliant and blame myself and imbibe and entrench a lot of what was going on at all times. Now here's the thing, the flip side of that is I've also experienced a life that most people would only imagine. I have traveled to places, I have been in rooms, I have met incredible people because of this experience, but I was entirely ill-equipped for it. I didn't have a mentor. There was nobody who had gone before me. Literally, when I came on screen, there's one black broadcaster, Moira Stewart. And bless her, before I went into television, I wrote to Moira and asked her to shadow her. And I didn't get a response. And later on, I found myself sitting next to her and she remembered my name. But Moira, you know, whether she would thank me for it or not, I know has had her own challenges as a black woman in that environment. And there is a story I'm at liberty to say, was that I became the face of Black Britain in a series that I'm most proud of. But Moira was the first pick for that series. And the editor of that series, Pat Young, called the newsroom that Moira was working in at the time and asked the editor, said, look, we're doing a new series and we want to ask Moira Stewart to present the series. And the editor said, why would you want to pick her for? You know, I mean, she was the biggest figure that we had. She was an icon in the Black community. So even from that response, I mean, she actually turned the role down, and then I was approached and I bit their hands off for it. They didn't have to ask me twice, and I'm so proud that I got that opportunity. But I can't sugarcoat it. It was a difficult journey in so many ways. And it took me decades to recover from the atmospheric abuse. I was a young Black girl from a working class background. I came up in Tottenham. I had never been in these systems. I had never been around white people, really. I was of a complete different class, basically. And I had nobody to hold my hand. So I'm so grateful that we're in a time where we are having these conversations. That I'm so grateful to be able to pass on whatever wisdoms I can. Now, I haven't answered your question yet. I've given you some context, but I haven't answered your question, so I'm going to answer it quickly. How do you thrive in the workplace? For me, I had to leave the industry. Like, that's my truth. I had to leave the industry. And so many of us who went into the industry with so much pride, we thought that the revolution was going to be televised. You know, I was in there in 18, like, when I went in, it was the summer of 89, I remember, and it was Spike Lee, Fight the Power, and you know, like the young black John Singleton and all like the young black filmmakers from the States, and we were in there and we were the young black posse and we were going to make shit happen. And we came out battle torn. You know, not just about, it wasn't just about surviving in the industry, but it was also about being able to tell our stories. There were so many battles to be able to tell our stories from our perspective. So many of us, we left the industry. I now am a digital content maker. So, you know, there's so many wonderful things about being able to, if you've got 200 quid, you can pick up a camera, you can buy Final Cut, you can start to tell your stories and find your tribe online. And there's so much freedom in that. You know, there are other challenges. I'm a solo entrepreneur, you know, I work non-stop around the clock, but I love what I do. And in all honesty, I feel so much freer, you know, on so many levels. It's the work that I've done, it's the journey that I've traveled in terms of my own mental health and addiction that manifested itself as addiction. And it's taken a long time, it's taken too long, you know, so I hope you guys get to shortcut that journey. You know, good on you, you pioneers of diversity and inclusion. You know, I have sat around in so many board meetings and so many tables for 2 decades and some and change, and they're still scratching their heads about how to change the landscape. Like, just come into the rooms, go into the communities, find the people that you're looking for, find out that the language that they're speaking in and speak to them in those language and come with your offering. That's all you have to do to find talented Black people. And they're still trying to figure it out because there isn't a will. So I really salute you young Black women who are creating your own platforms. You are expressing and channeling all of the dynamism, the leadership, the knowledge, the empathy, the love, the nurturing. You're channeling all of that into your own business. And so that is how I would suggest that you thrive in the workplace.
Thank you so much. Because of time, I'm just going to ask like a question each so that we can get to audience questions, because I'm sure I can hear a lot of ums. So it sounds like you don't have a lot to say. But I just want to thank you so much for that, Rihanna, and especially that point about how so many of us come in fueled, ready for change, and come up against these systems, because that's what they are, systems entrenched with racism and oppression and all manner of injustice. And it's disillusioning. And the fact that you've had to leave the industry in order to preserve your sanity and your well-being is so unfortunate. I think it's so unfortunate, because not only are these companies and organizations losing out on incredible talent, but also a lot of these companies are doing up optics about diversity and inclusion and, you know, equity and all, but you are pushing out the very people that you claim to support from your workplaces, and therefore reinforcing the societal issues that give rise to the need for DEI work in the first place. Like, make it make sense. Oh gosh, I get, yeah. And so my next question is for Rachel, actually. It's kind of like another angle to this question. What do you perceive to be the barriers to Black women thriving in the workplace?
I guess one thing would be, well, as you know, I work in diversity and inclusion. We speak about bias, unconscious bias, conscious bias, all of these things. So that's definitely a big part of it, just about the way Black women are perceived as all sorts of negative stereotypes that many of us, I'm sure, have been called, perceived as, yeah, all the tropes, the angry Black woman, even just, I think something that I see a lot is people thinking that they can just give us so much to do, just piling the work on us, and just thinking that we should be able to take it. We see it in so many other areas as well, like all the research done about like Black women and maternal health, just thinking that we can take so much pain, that we don't feel pain, all of these kinds of things. So I think that is a big issue. That's a big part of it, just the piling on, and then us thinking that we need to take on everything that is given to us. Because of the whole I'm having to work twice as hard. It's just like, well, if I don't do it, then, you know, I'm going to be seen as lazy, another negative stereotype, or I'm going to be seen as, you know, not doing enough, or all of these things. So I think that is a big thing that is holding us back. And just kind of in relation to the last question about, I've forgotten the question now. The last
what does it mean to thrive as Black
about
women?
what it means to thrive. So in order to thrive, we need to like combat these kind of barriers. And I think one thing is about, first of all, knowing when to stay and fight and knowing when to leave. I think of roles that I've been in and I'm just like, you stayed way too long, girl. Like, you fought too hard and it was not worth it. And there's been other times where I have left and it was hard. Like I've left jobs without another job before because the environment is so toxic, especially working in diversity and inclusion. Oh my goodness, it just adds a whole nother layer to things, like working for organizations that are, that profess to be inclusive, that sell diversity and inclusion, but are not diverse or inclusive themselves, that do not hold the values. And it's so hard to work in that environment. So I've been in places where I've just had to leave. And it was hard, but it's worth it for my own mental health. But there's times where I haven't, because I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to leave again without another job, or, you know, I don't want to be unemployed. Just all of these different things. So like knowing when to stay and knowing when to leave. And I think another thing that's holding Black women back in the workplace is being silenced, as Nikki, you shared in your story. And I think that's such a key part of us thriving in the workplace, like speaking up, but not just to like, you know, the manager or whatever, but speaking to like other people. Shani, you spoke about having that community of Black women. I think that is fundamental to us thriving in the workplace, having other Black women in your organization. And if you don't, having them in your organization, whether those are Black women or other allies, but also outside your organization, because sometimes things can be happening and you're like, am I going crazy? Is this me? And I've been in times like that. And I look back and I'm just like, wow, I wish I just spoke to someone. I wish I just shared like how I was feeling so they could just like make me realize that this, like what was going on was just not okay. So I think having that community of people within your organization and also outside is so important. And people speak about boundaries all the time. It is important. Like for me, I got to a point in my like D&I career, because it is really emotionally taxing and there's so much emotional labor that comes into doing D&I work as a Black woman. And I realized that I can't do this full time. So a lot of the roles I do are part-time, because I need to breathe, I need to live, I need to enjoy my life. I need to not always be thinking about racism. I need to not always be thinking about the perils of being a Black woman in the workplace. Because when I'm talking about it, when I'm delivering training, when I'm sharing those stats, I am in those stats as well. These are personal experiences. So taking that time out, whether that, if you can, well, depending on the industry you're in, but for D&I, for me, I need to breathe. And I've been doing it for many years. And just like you were saying, you go into the conversations, you go into the boardrooms, you go into the meetings, you're having the same conversation, just in a different room. And it's just like, guys, it's a no-brainer. You know what to do. You just need to do it. So looking after yourself is so important, however you do that, but having that community of people in your organization and outside to just make sure that, to just help you just validate your experiences and help you understand that you're not going crazy and this stuff is real. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Just that last part that you mentioned reminded me of a conversation I've been having with Rihanna about this concept of the lazy girl job. I really reckon we should rebrand that, because sometimes it's necessary to take a job that is just good for your nervous system. It's not every day, first Black leader of this, or, it's sometimes you just need to take a job so that you can get by, and that's okay. There's no shame in that at all. And Rihanna's definitely helped me process that and come to terms with that. And yeah, let's stop calling it lazy girl job, man. Healing girl job, okay? So Rachel, you brought up a really, really perfect example that I would like to expand on. And I'll go to Shani first, but feel free, ladies, to chime in afterwards. On the concept of the strong Black woman. Are we not tired? My question to you, there's two sides to it. My question is, when did you learn you weren't invincible? And how do you put down your cape? Question for all of you guys as well.
Good question. So I actually included this in a story that isn't going to be published, but it basically said, looking back, the pandemic was the least of my worries. And I think 2020 was like really difficult for a lot of people, but last year for me was like the worst year of my life, which is I had endless bereavements. Literally, like, I remember there was one week my uncle died, then my granddad died, and then my other uncle was like diagnosed with cancer. My godfather had this disease where he was going to have like 7 months to live. My sister was diagnosed with epilepsy. She had a car accident, she nearly died. And then in the midst of all of that, I was a bridesmaid. I was a maid of honor. I was working in the civil service. I was working on my book. So yeah, I think that made me realize that I wasn't invincible. And it's still hard. And like looking back, I don't know how I finished my book. I don't know how I wrote a script. I don't know how I left my job in the midst of all of that stuff. But it's I think I realized that I was more resilient than I thought I was. I realized the power of sisterhood, of community, of family, of therapy. Because I was thinking about everyone apart from myself, basically. And it was only one of my friends was like, Shani, yeah, but what about you? That really made me stop. And I realized that I'm not invincible, basically. Yeah. And sorry for crying. I don't know, I am doing very, thank you. I think, yeah.
Stop apologizing for crying. It's okay.
For those on the live stream, stop apologizing for crying.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Shani. I think the message is Black women, we do a lot because we can do a lot, but that doesn't mean we always should. And so I think the message from today is to look after yourself as you do the most to look after everyone else. And maybe this would be actually a good time to just maybe one last question, and then we can open it up to the audience, both here and online, for any questions. So I guess I'm going to ask each or any of you any parting words of wisdom you want to leave based on your experiences in life, your experiences at work. How have you bounced back, and how would you encourage other people wherever they are?
Can share. Kind of similar to what you were saying about, yeah, when did you realize that you weren't invincible? And mine was also last year as well, a very tough year. But what I learned from it was I can't come and kill myself for my job. I really can't. And I nearly did. And it was just like, why are you doing this? Like, it's absolutely not worth it. And kind of goes back to what I was saying about knowing when to fight and knowing when to leave. Yeah, so last year, my dad passed away very suddenly, and I felt so much pressure to go back to work. Like, I went back to work. I felt a lot of pressure to go back to work, like straight after the funeral. And I fell into the pressure and I went back. So 2 weeks after he died, I was back at work, and we'd done the funeral because it was a very quick turnaround. And yeah, I just felt so much pressure. I don't know why, but you know, you just get into these systems and you don't even know what's going on. You're just like, oh yeah, I need to go back to work. And a few weeks later, I had a breakdown. I had a panic attack at home. So I'd been working remotely for like 2 years, which is not conducive to who I am. I'm an extrovert. So working fully remote doesn't work for me. So I was just in this cocoon. And yeah, I completely broke down. And then I had to be signed off for 6 weeks. And yeah, you feel so much guilt being signed off. You spoke about being signed off earlier. And it's just like, no, I need this. Like, I need to heal. I need to not even heal. It wasn't even healing stage. I was still in shock. I'm still in shock. So parting words of wisdom is that you just really cannot kill yourself for your job. And please don't. It's just not worth it. Of course, we need money. And for me, it's not always just about money. It's about like this thing in my mind of how I want to look, how I want to be perceived as, you know, successful and strong and thriving and doing well. And it's just like, it's just not worth it. And, you know, I left that like pressurized environment and have took on a part-time role, which is so what I needed, the healing girl job. And it's allowed me to just breathe again. It's allowed me to just heal. It's allowed me to look after my well-being. I'm still on a journey. You can see me like stretching my back and all that, because I'm like, you know, it's still a journey because there's so much healing. There's years of healing. There's constant healing. It's a continuous thing. And yeah, I would just say in the most Nigerian way, you could not come and kill yourself for your job. As simple as it sounds, but please like take that to heart. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything Rachel said. After that madness I went through at work, I basically handed in my Black Excellence card. I was like, listen, I am doing the bare minimum. Absolutely. And it's so crazy because when I started doing the bare minimum, that's when I started getting like bonuses and stuff. It's really weird, but that's not my point. I think making time for your joy is really important, and doing things that speak to your soul, things that speak to the deepest part of you. For me, that's writing. And I think one of the reasons I did get through last year was because of writing, having an outlet. I think, yeah, life's hard. It can be really difficult. And I think finding time every day, ideally, is something I try to do, even if it's really small. It's doing something that's for yourself, that's for you, that doesn't have an outcome. Because I think I'm very like goals orientated. I'm very like productivity heavy. Like I'm always trying to use my time in the most effective way. But just doing something because I love doing it is like one of the main things that kind of gets me through really difficult times, I would say. So yeah, prioritizing what makes you happy. I've recently like started taking up rollerblading because I was like roller skating even. So I bought the skates because I was like, okay, I need a new hobby. Writing and reading used to be really fun for me when I was kind of work, so I need something new. And me and my sister found this class called Twerk After Work, which seems fun. So we're going to do that. And also just like going swimming as well. That's something that I've really like enjoyed, going to the spa, going to steam room, etc. But whatever that looks like for you, just I think definitely prioritizing it and making it. I don't want to say making it a goal because that kind of goes against the point, but basically making time and space for it, I think is really important.
So I have a lazy girl, a healing girl job. And it is the basically the lowest bar that I could get. And it does a number of things for me. I have it alongside my digital business. And it does a number of things. I'm quite clear about what it does for me. So first of all, it provides foundational income. So I never have to compromise the integrity of my love. You know, I'm never trying to like draw you in to be my next client, right? Like I'm here to be a lighthouse. If you see what I have and what I bring and what I offer and the testimonies of people who've been through what I have to offer, come on board. But it's never a need. I'm never desperate. It provides me with outside time. And so I'm constantly interacting with people in my side hustle because I'm a digital entrepreneur. I could be in my house all day, all week, all year, and never see another human being in the flesh. So it's really important for me to have this gear change. I have learned that I am enough. So I don't jump through hoops to prove myself to anybody. I'm so comfortable with the way that I have created a rhythm and a pattern that works for me. So the nature of my side hustle is the bar is so low is that I just actually don't do anything. Like all I have to do is show up. Like, so actually I get to whip my laptop out at work. Like it's kind of cool, you know. So where I would be creating at home and not getting paid for that creating time in my home studio, I actually get you know, my basic living bills covered while I'm creating. So find something that you like. It's front facing. I'm dealing with people all the time. You know, like when I say all the time, like literally kind of like, hi, like that's my, like, hi, you know, that's what I do while I've got my laptop out. So it's pretty cool, you know, and it gives me the gear change. So it's good for my mental health. It's good for my foundational income, gets me out of the house. And prioritize play. We have become so responsible because we've had the burden of everybody to carry. They call Black women the mules of the earth. We will pick up I'll take that load too. And we've carried it for too long. We have matured too early. We have forgotten the power of play. So prioritize play. Roller skating. I picked up the colouring book in the goodie bag. I'm going to be colouring my colouring book in. You know, it was so incredible today. And also have a spiritual practice. So many of the women here on the stage have talked about being part of the Christian church. I have a spiritual practice that works for me. I meditate daily. I have a writing practice daily where I dump all of this shit in my brain that is swirling around, 1,000 forms of fear. I put it down on paper and then I throw it away. Like literally, I just declutter my brain. And I do it religiously every day. And as much as I can, it doesn't happen every single day, but I work my body. I do some physical activity to work stress and to bring oxygen, life, vitality back into this body. So prioritize joy. Learn to seek it out. Let's not be ashamed of joy. Sometimes we are so much more comfortable in our discomfort. We've forgotten that joy is our birthright. wake up every morning and make an intention to recognize the seeds of joy, to touch them and to nurture them and to live joy. Because we don't know how long we've got. This might be all that we've got. And what I know about recovery is I had to 180 some of the patterns and habits and responses and reactions and ways of living and seeing that had become normal for me. I had to 180 them. I had to put them in reverse. Know that you are enough and that you are not too much. That's it. Thank you.
So much. Okay, guys, we have the QR code on the screen. So if you want to ask any questions, please do scan and share your questions. Have we received any questions yet? Okay. Maybe. Oh, okay. So first question for anyone, I guess, on the panel. To what extent should we play the game? Or should we be trying to change the rules?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about knowing when to fight and knowing when to leave. I think sometimes you play the game, sometimes you fight to change it, depending on the context and depending on how much energy you have and how worth it is. I've definitely played the game, and I've definitely, I mean, the nature of my work is about trying to change the game. So yeah, I usually veer on that side of, yeah, I want to change the game. I want to make things better. I want to create more equality, inclusion. But you have to pick your battles for your own well-being. And also, depending on the context that you're in, like, they need to want change as well. Or there needs to be some people who want change and people who are in positions of in decision-making positions. So I think it's really context specific. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Anyone want to add to that?
Yes, I definitely agree with everything Rachel said. I think also if you're playing the game, know that you're playing it. Like, don't forget that. Because sometimes it's so easy to kind of get like so caught up in your industry trying to progress. Just bear in mind that it's a game that you're playing. And I think in regards to the last part, I don't know, I feel like I've just become very cynical about the extent to which you can change things in certain organizations. And I'm a big advocate for creating like your own space. And so many of the Black women that spoke, even Nikki, you know, you're creating spaces. That's part of changing the game. From a very young age, wherever I find myself, I'm always bringing Black people together in some kind of capacity. So for years, I ran a Black women's community group. We had a book club at work. I had the kind of underground ACS community. And I think even though sometimes these things can feel quite small, the impact that you're having is really significant. So I think, I mean, it depends what industry you're in. I think definitely if you're able to kind of make change and do that, if you can't, be aware of the game you're playing, but also outside of work, inside of work, be that change as well by creating your own kind of systems, your own institutions, your own communities.
Nice. Rihanna, did you want to say anything on that? Okay, so the next question is, how can non-Black peers or colleagues be advocates for Black women without coming across as nosy, not minding your own business, and how can they be effective in that?
I think we really have to be open to people who don't know asking about things that they don't know. You know, we live in a cancel culture, and it's even though we're tired, I know we're tired, but I think we have to be a little bit gentle with people who are asking questions, be they imperfectly, be they even a little bit offensive. I think we have to offer some generosity to be able to really move the needle. Give people, white people, the benefit of the doubt when they ask us questions. You know, we were sharing a story earlier on when I was in LA. I had a gay staff member, and I said something that in retrospect was just so ignorant. And she just jumped on me and wanted to tear my neck out. Like, this is my staff member. And so I've been on the receiving end of that, making clumsy comments about communities that I know nothing of, that is not my lived experience. And so I think it's really important for us to be able to have some openness, and to be willing to sit down and explain when we're asked questions. Look, if we develop our intuition as Black people, as Black women, we know where the question is coming from. You know where the question is coming from. You can feel it. The problem has always, for me, been when I've been out of touch with my internal radar. Right? I know, but in retrospect, I knew at the time. I just was foggy about it. So sharpen that tool and depend on it about where the question is coming from. And if you feel that the question is coming from somewhere that is trying to trick you or trip you up or get you into trouble, gaslight you, because it can be that way sometimes, then give yourself the right. You can get another job, give yourself the right. Know that you are not too much. You can speak, you can voice that you don't want to answer this question, or it's not your responsibility to answer the question, or however else you want to answer it. But if you feel that the question is really somebody stumbling around and seeking for the right language, because remember, the fact of Blackness is not homogenous anyway. What's right for you isn't necessarily right for me just because we're two Black women. It's all nuanced. There are shades of grey, so let's respect those shades of grey. Allow serious seekers and serious would-be allies, people who seriously do have a conscience but don't understand what the problems are, to ask those questions. So let's open the door for that.
That's good. Since you're holding the mic, there's a question specifically for you, Rihanna. Is there any training or support systems or peer groups you can recommend to a fellow DEI? I don't know what Jedi stands for. Justice. Oh, okay, nice. A Jedi consultant and trainer fairly early in their career. Okay, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. There we go.
The truth is, specifically, I don't, but come join on my website, on my program. We have a fantastic community, and it applies to every area of life. What I teach is exactly about that, is about sharpening the tools of intuition, about knowing what your boundaries are, about understanding when you are complicit in the dance. Because my belief is, as adults, we carry over so much trauma responses from our childhood that don't serve us in adult life. And my belief, and I've seen so much evidence of this in this room today, is that actually as adults, we are self-defining. So if you find yourself caught up in abusive atmospheres over and over again, be it in your personal or work life, then you are the common denominator. So we need to do the inner work. And I believe that the inner work is a continuous process. Nowadays, I really don't sweat the small stuff. I don't expect everybody to love me. I work the system, I play the system for my benefit, whatever the system is. So And I don't take responsibility. I don't presume that I can change anybody else. The only person that I have complete agency over is me. And I'm grown. I've got my big girl panties on. I get to choose which rooms I stand in. I get to choose which rooms I stay in. And if I don't like it, I know that I can work and craft my own reality, my own sources of income, my own communities, and I can seek them out through the apps and so on and so forth that are here. So, you know, come to riannascipio.com and sign up at one of the myriad of opportunities that there are on the website.
Thank you, Rihanna. How can we see the other questions? Because I know there's a whole bunch. Oh, for Rachel, sorry. Rachel, do you want to have a go at answering that?
I think there need to be some more support systems. All of mine are like very informal, just with other like Black women I know who work in the space, because you need space to like vent and cry and be frustrated, because yeah, working in D&I as a Black woman is sometimes quite violent, to be honest. It's quite like I've worked with diversity and inclusion consultants of all races. And I remember early in my career, I worked with another DEI consultant who's a white woman, and she's awesome. But the backlash that I received in sessions was not the backlash that she received. Like people would nitpick at my statistics, like, well, the question they asked wasn't good. And I was just like, go and take that up with Ipsos Mori. I didn't do the research. So like, I think peer groups and support systems are really key, but all the ones that I have are quite informal, just with friends. But was there something at some point that someone created? Was it you? Yeah, for like Black people who work in diversity and inclusion is so needed. Trainings, that's a really interesting one, because diversity and inclusion is a profession that has so many roots into it. Like you didn't just like study the course at university, or there aren't really many courses. Like I don't think I've been on a DEI course. It's like you just kind of learn as you go. But I know there is in some spaces there are things rising around like accredited courses and things like that. But whoever asked that question, I'm more than happy to speak to you about working in D&I and progressing in your career, and can introduce you to so many other amazing Black women in the space.
Nice, thank you. I like this question. How do you know your purpose and what career path to choose and what you're supposed to do on this earth? And for context, this questioner has quit their job since March and they're trying to figure out life.
What a big question. So I think in my life, and I'm still very young, I think there's certain things that have happened that looking back, I've seen, okay, oh, that makes sense. But I think I speak quite a lot about like the soul and doing things that speak to you. And I think there's been so many environments where I've been in and I've just felt like this is the right thing. It's like a feeling. But juxtaposed with that, when I was working in the civil service, there were so many moments where I was just like, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Like I feel like this is actually killing me, being here. But I think in terms of getting there, I think just trying different things. We're not from a generation now where we have to stay in a job for like 25 years. Like if you don't like something, you can do it for a few months, or let's say 6 months, 9 months, and then you can try something else. I think by trying different things, you figure out what it is you like, what you don't like. And I think the more you do things, the more things start to make sense. You kind of put together a picture. So I think in terms of my own, like I've always kind of loved storytelling in some kind of capacity. And I've always loved reading. I've always loved writing. I think at school, being a writer, that wasn't something that was ever presented to me. Like I never studied English, not that I needed to. I studied international development. I studied politics. I really wanted to work for the UN. I wanted to work in like diplomacy and that kind of stuff. And it kind of didn't Did it happen? I worked in civil service, I was close, but I always thought that's what I was going to do. And I remember kind of being at university, loads of my friends were like lawyers, doctors. Well, that's what they wanted to go into. And I never really knew what I wanted to do. I kind of knew I kind of wanted to work in the third sector, but looking back nearly like 10 years, that's changed. And I think it's okay to like change your mind. Sometimes this process can take time, but through speaking to people, through exposing yourself to different opportunities, through trying different things, you kind of figure out what it is that you like, what excites you, what you don't like, what you really hate. And so I think it's a journey really. And I think it's okay to change your mind as well. Like we don't have to stick to things if we don't like it, because life's short, you know, we don't know when our time's going to be up. But I think looking back, there's always been things that I've always really spoken to me. So I'm really big on community, bringing people together. And as much as I've ended communities here and there, I'm still like doing that in some kind of capacity. So yeah, I mean, that would be how I would answer the question.
That's good. I think because of time, I might combine the first two questions because I feel like they overlap. So okay, I guess the second question sounds like the part A of it, which is I've healed years of racial trauma now. It's hard to relive the trauma and see triggers. What steps should we take to soften that aspect so it doesn't affect us? And then following your lows, needing to step back and prioritize healing, how did you recognize or enable yourself to be in a position of helping the community again? I have some thoughts on this, but I want to see if anyone else on the panel wants to share.
I feel in answer to the first question, how did you recognize and enable yourself to be in a position of helping the community again? So a large part of my journey was feeling very low self-esteem, you know, feeling adoration, public adoration, but not real love. Is a different feeling. I didn't feel known. I didn't feel truly seen. And the imposter was alive and kicking in me, the imposter syndrome, you know? I didn't feel like the outside matched the inside. And so there was a lot of shame in the spaces between you and I. And for me, the healing journey, being able to teach and to give service and to tell my story has been such a massive part of my healing journey. To know that actually it's the only thing that makes sense of the journey when you are able to tell your story and liberate somebody else with your presence. This is what Marianne Williamson says. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And so what I started to understand when I really dived deep into my own shadow work, into my inner child work, was that it was incumbent upon me to completely change and transmute this idea that I wasn't enough, that there was something wrong with me. And the way that I transmuted that was to tell my story. And so it's very natural now for me. I feel like it's almost the spiritual mission to teach someone when you've healed, to pass it on. So it's but not before it's time, because then you do so without dignity and you do so without healing, which kind of brings us to the second question about re-triggering, reliving trauma triggers. So this is going to be controversial. I have spent years in therapy, and I know that your experience was different, Nikki, because we've sat down. Actually, I've got a podcast coming out, and Nikki's my first interviewee think she's incredible. It's called The Treasure in Your Trauma. And but I spent years of therapy, sitting with a therapist in Los Angeles. And I would come out with little nuggets here and there. But for the most part, I would come out of having recycled the horrors that I have lived through, feeling a bit drained, feeling re-triggered, feeling like a bit hit over the head without a roadmap to come, and after a few years, I thought, okay, I need to feel better now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not just about you go to the therapist couch for years and then you come out and you still feel shit, or even worse sometimes than when you went in. So the way that I teach is, how is trauma showing up in your life today? Because guess what? The job, the parents, the whatever it was who where the traumatic situation occurred, I find the people that get caught are the ones that are actually still stuck in the story. Sometimes they're talking about people who are dead, like they've long gone, but they're cycling around, sort of stuck in a hoop, stuck in a groove, telling the same thing. So what I like to do is talk very little about the story. Like, I know what happened. We know what happened. Like, you went through shit. We don't need to go into the details of it over and over and over again. What we need to do is find out, what are the patterns, the habits, the behaviors, the trauma responses that are showing up in your life, and how can you heal 90% of it and manage the other 10%? Because that's been my experience. Am I the person that I would have been had all of it not happened? No, but then I kind of feel like it's a rhetorical question. You're born and shit happens. Like, none of us are here the same as we were when we were born. It's just, I don't know if, it's kind of like, it's not possible really. And anyway, it happened. So I get to heal 90% of it and manage the rest. So my answer to that question is, don't recycle it. It happened. You can't change that. The good news is that trauma is not what happened. This is what Bessel van der Kolk says, and what's his name, the other guy? It's not what happened. It's your nervous response, your trauma response to what happened. So you can change your response even if you can't change what happened. So that's the good news. You can change it, and you can change the trajectory of your life and the experience of your life, and you can calm your nervous system. You can notice, and even if you still get triggered in the moment, you can notice it, pull back a little bit, be the viewer, the watcher of yourself, and you can actually take responsibility as the adult to calm yourself. So learn the tools is the answer to that question. Is learn the tools. Read Bessel. What would I do if I would do my journey over again? I would have found that book a long time ago. In fact, I did in Los Angeles, just didn't read it. I won it and I didn't read it. Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. Pete Walker, Complex CPTSD, Complex Childhood Trauma. Read those two books. Educate yourself about how it works, because that alone will free you from feeling like there's something wrong with you. You are normal, having normal responses to abnormal circumstances.
Thank you so much, ladies. And I think that's a perfect way to end the panel on this last question, which is, what does intentional rest look like for you? For the sake of time, I'm just going to quickly just kind of summarize what we've discussed. So we've heard today different stories, many of which I'm sure we can relate to, we can identify ourselves in them. But I think the key takeaway, at least for me, is that you need to know what's happening in your body. You need to tune into what's happening in your body and then meet your body where it's at and address its needs. So the question of what intentional rest looks like for me, I would flip it back and say, what does intentional rest look like for you? And I would say, begin by asking, what kind of rest do you need? What kind of exhaustion are you experiencing? Like, what is it that you're going through and what impact is it having on you? And that is where you would be able to identify and determine the appropriate solution, I think. But because we are super, super over time, I think, are we going to just head over to, okay, so the bar is open across the road for us to go and have some drinks and do some networking in the lovely Malangatana space. So you're welcome to make your way. If you can, please do leave us some feedback. We really, really would appreciate to hear how you found the event, what we can do to improve, and any other thoughts you want to share with us. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And thank you for tuning on the live stream as well. Yeah, great to have you and get home safe. Good night.